This afternoon we will start with the software presentation that will be done by Helder Silva and Faria. The presentations will be chaired by Kuldar As, who is the Deputy Director of the Digital Archives of Estonia. He's responsible for establishing the Sustainable Archiving and Long-Term Availability Network for the born digital content of the Republic of Estonia. He's also a member of the Estonian government, working in IT interoperability and architecture board, representing the aspects of sustainable data management. Kuldar is one of the initiators of the first E-ARK project and is currently the technical lead of the E-ARK initiative. Kuldar, please.
Thank you, Adelina. Yeah, now we're getting more and more practical. So before lunch, you have already heard a generic overview of the eArchiving building block in general, and a lot also about the specifications. But obviously, specifications are not going to solve the whole issue of digitalization. So we also need to have the software to actually execute all the digitalization tasks. Within the eArchiving building block, we have been trying to maintain a multitude of different software. We all know that one individual piece of software is not suitable for everyone. So we actually have 5 different software developers, all coming to the eArchiving building block with their own software. We can't really present all of this here, so the time just doesn't allow it. So instead, we are today concentrating on one company, the Keep Solutions from Portugal, a SME started in 2008, and which is concentrating solely on providing open source solutions for digitalization issues. And my 2 dear colleagues here, Helder Silva, the Infrastructure Director of Keep Solutions, and Faria, the Innovation Director of Keep Solutions, are now taking over and starting to present some of the tools we have in the eArchiving.
Okay, thank you, Kuldar. Let me just switch the presentation. So, as Kuldar said, my name is Helder Silva, and I'm here to present the end-to-end e-archiving solutions for digital preservation. But before we start, I would like to say, if by the end of the presentation you guys still have some questions or doubts, please do not hesitate and contact us, the e-archiving team. Okay. Sorry, I'm not shifting the slides. Sorry. So let's start this presentation, but let's try by breaking out its title. Okay. So. And just to be different, I will start by the end of the title, which is digital preservation. So what is digital preservation? So digital preservation can be seen as the set of actions to ensure that digital information remains accessible and usable throughout time. This seems like a fairly simple quote, right? But it isn't, okay? So if we take a look at all the words that come out when we talk about digital preservation, we see that actually digital preservation is neither simple, neither it is a one-time activity, and neither it is only a software-related question, okay? So let's see how e-archiving is going to help in that matter, okay? So most of you have seen the flyer from e-archiving building block. And there you might read, it provides specifications, reference software, training and service desk support for digital archiving, including digital preservation. So myself and Luis are here to present specifically reference software, which is kind of related as well with the specifications. But obviously, as a team, we are representing the whole picture, also the training and the service desk. So end-to-end, breaking out the title, I'll pick it up the end-to-end solution. What do I mean by end-to-end solutions, you might question. So I mean OIS, Open Archival Information System, end-to-end. From pre-ingest to access, from having information to be preserved until you have access to that information into different formats. Sorry. As I said moments ago, digital preservation is not only about software, but actually it plays a very important role. So where in this figure the software comes in. So these are the tools. This is the software that myself and Luis will be presenting in the afternoon. So for the pre-ingest, we'll be talking about RODA-IN and database preservation toolkits. For all the other main OIS functional units, we'll be talking about RODA. And for the access part, we'll be talking about RODA and digital preservation. Toolkit, obviously. So let's start talking about e-archiving tools. We will start by RODA-IN. And what is RODA-IN? So RODA-IN actually is a SIP creation tool. It was built for producers. It outputs in several different formats, including, as we talked during the morning, including the E-ARK information packages, in this case, E-ARK submission information package. It conforms to several open standards, just to name a few, METS, EAD, Dublin Core, and so on. It allows to have multiple descriptive metadata schemas. It is multi-language. At the moment, those are the languages that we support, but actually other languages can be added along the way. So you guys are all invited to contribute in that matter as well. So it is multi-platform, and actually one of the main advantages, it operates offline. It does not require any network connectivity in order to operate. So, which scenarios does it cover? Actually, in the morning, Istvan already unveiled some of the scenarios our tools cover. But in a nutshell, it covers the scenario where one has some folders and files in their file system. Most certainly, they are hierarchically organized, and they want to package those files and folders into, for example, e-ARK SIPs in order to send them, to transfer them into a digital repository. Okay, that's the scenario RODA-IN is covering. So how does it work? RODA-IN is basically a desktop tool, okay, very simple one. You might see there the interface. It is composed by 4 stages. The first stage is basically choosing the folders or files that you want actually to create packages from. Then you have a second option in order to choose the association strategy. This basically means if you want to create one SIP for all those folders and files, or if you want to create several SIPs for those folders. After that, you might add some metadata or to edit some metadata, descriptive metadata. And in the end of the day, you will end up in the 4th stage where you might have some options where to store those SIPs and some output naming conventions. And there you go. In a few clicks, you will end up with some e-ARK SIPs. So the next question that comes up is, where can I find it? So you might find it under the CEF eArchiving building block page, under the services page. You might find it in rodain.roda-community.org, or even you can check its source code on GitHub in that URL. So I've talked about the SIP producer tool. Now I will talk about RODA. But what is RODA? So basically, RODA is the long-term digital repository. Okay, it is suitable for large corporations or public bodies. It is a full-featured repository. Since the ingest until the access, I'm going to explain later on how it covers all those parts. It conforms to open standards. Just to name a few, I will talk about e-ARK IPs, information packages. It is vendor independent. It allows us to ensure the authenticity of the information by storing information using premise, preservation metadata using premise, and also, if the institution wants to do so, it also might achieve ISO 16363 compatibility. And also it has some pluggable preservation actions, that is the set of actions that actually will ensure that the information keeps accessible throughout the time. Also, one of the main features it is scalable. Okay, the indexing and search capabilities are scalable for the needs of the users. Also, it is auditable. This means that every single action on the repository is stored, and that information can be consulted later on, for example, for accountability purposes. And also, it is fairly easy to integrate with third-party systems. So, I've explained what Rhoda is. How does it work? So basically, Rhoda is a web-based software. So you only need a browser to try it out. Okay, so with the right permissions, all the main OIS functional units are one click away. So now, in order to talk from end to end, that is from ingest, having the data, until accessing the data, I will explain further on how this is done in Rhoda, okay? So the first step is ingest. In Rhoda, not quite sure if you guys can see very clearly, but in Rhoda, basically, ingest is a multi-step process. It begins with the pre-ingest page, which is basically a static page with information for the producers, the people holding the data, how they can produce their SIPs, how they can organize their information using a certain classification scheme, information about submission agreements, and so forth, even a link for downloading Rhoda-in, if that is going to be the tool used to produce the SIPs. Then we have the transfer page. This is basically a page where one can see all the SIPs that are available for ingest, or if none is there, you might upload an SIP at that moment. And that is basically, it's very simple. It puts available a form, you upload an SIP. In the end, you will end up with a list of SIPs. You choose the SIPs that you want to ingest, and then you only need to press the button create. After selecting the button create, you will be presented with a page for selecting different workflows. I'm talking about ingest workflows, the set of actions that will be done in order to transform a certain SIP into an AIP. And then it all starts by choosing the workflow, which is a pre-selected set of actions to be done. Select the type of SIP that we are dealing with. Actually, Rhoda supports a few. Just to name, E-ARK SIP is one of them, but we also support Bagit, or even for demo purposes, you might upload a file into the repository. Then you have all the tasks that will be done to each SIP during ingest. You might turn on or off some of the tasks, for example, virus check or file format identification, but obviously that option is not suitable for digital preservation. We really need to have those kind of insurance for ensuring digital preservation. In the end, we just need to press the button start, and we are presented with the process that will ingest our SIPs. We can see more detail by clicking on the process itself. We know, consulting this information, who created this process, in which point in time, what was the type of SIP selected, all the specific tasks that will be performed to each SIP. And in the end of this page, we are presented with detailed information about the progress and also we can check more detailed information about the processing that is being done to a specific SIP. So in a certain ingest process, we might ingest several SIPs, but we can see specific information about the tasks that are being done to a specific SIP. So this is a very similar page to the one for the process. It has time information, and it has detailed information about all the tasks that are being done. For example, there we can see the information that the second task that is being done is virus check, and it also puts available the information of the virus check itself, more detailed information. And actually this information, every single piece of that information is stored in premise events in order to ensure that the repository is trustable. So I've talked about ingest, the process of getting the data into the repository in order to be able to preserve it. Now I'll be talking about that, the data management. Data management is basically taking care of your data, okay? And data in our repository, our intellectual entities, are no less than metadata, descriptive metadata, and data. And Rhoda supports, as default, AAD 2002 and Dublin Core as the metadata schemas. But actually, if your metadata schema is XML-based, we can support it, okay? And in the end of the day, each intellectual entity on your repository might have several metadata schemas in place, because you might need to have the same information in different formats for different communities. So we put that, feature available. And then we have all the other more administrative tasks, informations to provide, like when it was created, the permissions associated. Then we have a menu in order to move it, to change the permissions, who might read, who might download, etc. And we might download the intellectual entity as a whole, descriptive metadata, preservation metadata, the data itself, the data files itself, or simply some parts of it. The repository, Rhoda repository, also puts available some stats. That's also important in order to know which type of data we have on our repository. So it has some beautiful graphics, in my opinion. These are applicable for intellectual entities, for representations, for files, for file formats, for events, you name it. All the information that we have inside, in some way, is presented as a graphic or as a chart in the stats page. So I presented ingest, how to put the information in there. I presented data management, how we can manage the data. Now I will talk a bit about archival storage. Archival storage, it's a very important thing for us, okay? So this basically means that actually all the information that we put inside our repository is stored on the file system, okay? And this is a strategy that we have followed in order to provide a better transparency, because if the software provider goes out of market, you might go to your server, analyze the file system, the information will be there, okay? And actually, as it is supported by e-archiving standards, specifications, you might go to the file system and inspect each of the parts. They are very simple to understand. And obviously, the documentation is there, the specifications documentation is there, so it's fairly easy to understand how the information is laid out in the file system. Obviously, in this regard, for the moment, we only support file system, but obviously, we could develop the product further in order to support object stores, things like Amazon S3 and so forth. Rhoda is already prepared to take those kind of new strategies in order to store the information. So another very important stage of digital preservation repository is obviously preservation planning. Okay? By preservation planning, I mean every single thing that needs to be done in order to provide, to ensure that information keeps accessible throughout time. And for that, since Rhoda version 3, we introduced the concept of representation information or representation network. What is the representation network? It's basically a set of information that actually allows us to understand and interpret the information that we have stored in our repository. Okay? So we have PDFs. Okay, one type of representation information might be the PDF specification documentation, okay? And this can be connected, this representation information can be connected actually to the AIP as a whole, the archival information package as a whole, or to a specific representation, or even to a specific file, for example, a PDF file, okay? We also have a risk, register, which actually contains both technical and non-technical risks, because if we think well, risk management is in any kind of business. And we think that digital preservation also should follow a risk management strategy. You perceive a risk, then you will analyze if that risk exists on your repository, and then you will take action. That is why we put it available a risk register. We also allow anyone with the proper permissions, obviously, to consult the preservation events that happen throughout the repository or to a specific objects. We also put available preservation actions. Obviously, we are talking about digital preservation. Digital preservation, in the end of the day, might take some actions in order to mitigate a certain risk that we perceived in the repository. So we put available a set of actions, predefined actions, in order to take care of some risks that might happen on your repository. And that's pretty much it in what concerns digital preservation planning. To end up my OIES/RODA analysis on compliance, we need to talk about access and discovery services. So basically, RODA, as I said before, is a web-based software. So it puts available a catalog. So you might consult a catalog in order to see your fonts or your collections. These are the top-level hierarchy levels that we support. And then we have a search, both basic search and advanced search. And in here, you might do some full-text search or something. And you can perform that search on an intellectual entity per se, an AIP as a whole, or in a representation or in a file. So if we take a look, you might search in an advanced way on the metadata attributes of all the AIP stored in a repository, things like the title, the authors, some dates, wherever. We index that information so we can search on it. Also for the files, you might search in an advanced way using the file attributes. Also, for the access purpose, we have already built in some viewers. For example, sorry, let me just drink a little bit of water. So for viewers, we have already built in some of them. This is, for example, the PDF viewer. You can slide through the pages. We have integrated viewers for images. We might consult technical information for a certain file. In this case, this is the technical information for an image. And if no viewer is already available for it, you might simply download the file. Okay, so just a couple of details it is worthwhile mentioning. So, as I said before, RODA is kind of easy to integrate with other systems because it puts available what we think it is a well-documented REST API. Okay, we also allow to integrate with a thing which is called Central Authentication Services, which is the acronym CAS, which is basically a single sign-in or sign-off system. It's basically a piece of software that sits between the user and the software and might authenticate or authorize the user to access, for example, the repository using different authentication methods. Just to name a few, SAML, OAuth, OpenID, etc. And pretty much it. And now another pretty good question, where can I find RODA? So once again, you can find RODA and information about RODA in CEF eArchiving page under services. You might get more information about RODA in RODA webpage, which is located in roda-community.org. Actually, that's a site that has information, and it is the demo itself. So you might try out the software online, and also you might check out RODA source code on GitHub. So I'm almost done with my presentation. I just want to mention something. So I have presented some tools, okay? But with the same tools, actually, you might have different architectures for solving different problems. I will just name a few. So with RODA, RODA-in, and etc., you might have a scenario, a use case where high availability for access is required. For example, we have one of that cases, which is a hospital. This is their requirement. They need to have high availability for access. We have another use case, another scenario, where high diversity of file formats is their need. Okay, for example, the National Archives, it will receive a bunch of different file formats. We have other scenarios where seamless integration with live data is a requirement, for example, a university. And then we have two examples, two use cases that will be talked later on by our colleagues, which is high volume of files, which is the European Publications Office use case, and the high throughput on ingest, which will be talked later on by the TaxSud colleagues. So during this afternoon, you will hear about the use of RODA in European Publications Office by Maria Cardami, and tomorrow you'll be hearing about the use of RODA in the TaxSud, the taxation and custom units. And with this, I end my presentation. Thank you.
Yeah, I can confirm that really the work they're delivering, not just for the company, but also for the European Commission and the eArchiving building block is worth a nice round of applause. Are there any immediate questions about the RODA in RODA? Yes, please.
Sorry, but I just wanted to check on something. Is there a possibility to introduce some sort of classification of information, level of classification? If so, do you also have special access right for a certain user that may differ from user to user? Then you mentioned that the information is staying on a file system. Whose file system? Thanks.
Okay, so by parts, classification plan. So obviously you might go to RODA and produce your own classification plan or schema. That is the hierarchy that you are going to organize your things. That is associated with permissions, obviously. Different people has access to different parts of the hierarchy. And actually, I didn't present that, but that information might be downloaded and used in RODA-in, the C production tool, in order to arrange the information on the producer side so it goes to the proper place when it gets ingested. So I haven't mentioned that because 25 minutes fly and I could not cover all the aspects. For the second question, your file system. So basically the software might be installed on your infrastructure, on your IT infrastructure. So in the end of the day, it will lie on your file system, on your servers, institutions. Okay, so you are the owners of the data. The information will be on your site. Is that answers the question? The questions. Thank you.
And if there aren't any further questions, then thank you, Helder, and we'll continue with Luis and the database preservation tools.
Hi, I'm Luis Faria, Innovation Director of KIP Solutions, and I'll be presenting to you the eArchiving tools for database preservation. They are open source tools and they are all available in www.databasepreservation.com. I'll show the link in the end again. So let me first present to you a common scenario. An information system has been in use for 15 years and has a relational database behind it. It's about to be decommissioned because it's going to be replaced by a new, more advanced system. But you need to keep the old information, the old content for legal and historical reasons. So this means it has been selected for long-term archival. So how we will do to archive this information? You have the original the database system. You use an export tool to export information into a format that can be kept for dozens of years, what we call the preservation format. The main preservation format, the most adequate currently, is the CR format. So years later, if a user wants to access the information that was on the database, so the user goes into a repository and finds the archival record it needs to consume, retrieves the preservation format, and then uses the tools to browse, to view the content, to browse the content on the web or on the desktop, or load the information into a modern database system where you can do data mining and deep learning and these kind of things. So in the end, the IT department is happy because it no longer needs to maintain an old system that is lying around there. Management is happy because costs have been reduced, and users are happy because they can access and reuse the information on modern systems. And this use case is not just applicable not just to obsolete databases, but also for continuous or frequent delivery. And actually, some national archives actually mandate the delivery of public administration databases every 5 years. So what are the tools that we are presenting here? The tools are a set of tools that are, or modules of the database preservation toolkit. We are rebranding this. So we heard about database preservation toolkit and database visualization toolkit. Now they are all database preservation toolkit, and there are 3 tools or modalities within it. One is the desktop, which is a desktop application to save the database content into a preservation format or export it to the format. It also allows to validate this preservation format and to browse and search in the content. There is also the enterprise, which is a web application to browse and search on the content of multiple large preserved databases. And finally, the developer, which is a set of command line tools and libraries for automation and systems integration. So going one by one on these tools, let's first start with the desktop. The desktop application is the Database Preservation Toolkit desktop is a desktop application that works on Windows, Mac OS, and also in Linux. It looks like that. And these are all real screenshots of the tool. It allows you to connect to an existing database and export the content into a eArchiving file or other preservation format that can be supported by the system. Currently, the main one is eArchiving, and allows you to do this by connecting to a local or remote database. It also allows to do the validation against the specification of the eArchiving file, but also doing many additional checks like referential integrity and so on to ensure a thorough validation of the content. You can then enrich the archived database with descriptions on every level, on the databases, on the tables, on the columns, so someone that is unfamiliar with the database can understand what is the content. And finally, you can search the records. You can browse and search the content on a Google-like search. You can search throughout the whole database by any word, or you can drill down to specific tables and do advanced search in specific fields to find exactly what you're looking for. And alternatively, you can use also the tool to import the eArchiving into a modern database system, to use the full query power of a modern database engine, enable advanced analytics like this tool from Oracle, and do data mining or deep learning with artificial intelligence technologies. The other tool or modality, because it depends on the use case you have, is the enterprise. The enterprise uses an enterprise architecture. It is a web application that can be horizontally scaled using many servers in an elastic way to provide, to allow to have very many large databases being accessed by many users simultaneously. On this system, and everything via the browser, you can manage multiple databases. So everything you did on desktop to manage their status, enrich the metadata, validate them, make them ready for the users to search. You can do advanced data transformation. As you can see, the idea here is to allow to transform the content to answer useful questions. Normally, a database is composed, as you see in the diagram, composed of many tables of different sizes that relate information from each other. And normally, to answer a useful question, we have to draw information from several tables and to connect it. And some of the tables, or even the columns, are simply accessory to this mechanism. The denormalization allows to prepare the database, so you don't need to go through these tables to get to answer directly the questions. You just need to use the search, a simple search like the users are used to do on any search engine, and have their questions answered. It also allows you to do table and column hiding, to simplify the browse and searching, to hiding accessory information, which in turn also allows to us some level of anonymization of the content. Another thing, another feature, is the single sign-on. You can integrate with the authentication protocol of your own institution. There are many protocols that are supported. One of those that are there are from EID building block, from the Portuguese implementation of it. Also, social login, like Google and Facebook, and two-factor authentication systems for increased security, like with FIDO, YubiKey, and Google Authenticator. Also, there is a support for internal or external configurable authorization. So after the database is prepared for users to access and the user is authenticated into the system via the web, he can then search the prepared, denormalized, anonymized database content and find the information he is looking for. After he finds it, he can then export this part of the data into a format that is compatible with Microsoft Excel or any other spreadsheet software to make some easy analytics and diagrams. The final tool I'd like to present is the developer. It has a command line for automation of periodic preservation tasks, like saving to the preservation format, validating the formats, editing metadata in batch, and so on. It has a code library, so for allow easy development of systems integration. So we can go to your vendor production systems and integrate directly with them to produce the CR. And it is open source and allows for custom development without being vendor locked in. All code base is published. So how do you choose between these modalities or tools? They work on different kind of services on the desktop or on the web, and are for different users. Besides of what this is a side-by-side comparison of the features. Besides of what have been already shown, the last 4 items show that the differences are mainly that the enterprise is more suited for when you have many users that want to access the data, and many databases and very large that you need more than one computer to be able to support it, and also allows the integration with repositories like Rhoda, and to embed the viewer on web portals. So let's see exactly how this works on the archival flow. You have, on the producer, you can have the database, relational database, and some, for example, related files, which you can also put into the preservation, the CR preservation formats. So you could use there the desktop or the developer tool to extract, to save the content into the CR preservation formats. And this will be the package that you can deliver to the archive. The archive, with, for example, the database, the enterprise, can then validate the format as was received by a producer using desktop tool or the enterprise tool, and then add it to the simple catalog on the enterprise and use the database viewer for the user to access. So the user will go there, select the database, and view the contents. Alternatively, this could be done with the desktop, but in a single computer. So there is restrictions on how then you will give access to this. A more complex or full archival, drawing the whole ecosystem together, and this may not be needed for your use case, will be a case where you want to preserve not only the relational database and related files, but also the original application. So then you'll need an expert to provide documentation that preserves as much as possible, documents as much as possible the original application. You, of course, pack the database and the related files into the CR preservation format. You may also give an alternative representation with the original backup files, the SQL or any other file you want to put in, just to be sure no information is lost, plus some finding aids or metadata to allow to enrich the catalog. And you pack all of these, using, for example, the root in, into a eArch zip. And this is the package that you give into the archive. Then proper archive like digital preservation archive like RODA, together integrated with database preservation toolkit enterprise, can then do all the ingest validations, including various check and metadata checks, but also the CR validation. Add this to a proper catalog, so with all the catalog structure, the classification plan, and so on. And then the user can use the catalog to find the archival record and then access the integrated viewer of the database to access the content. So it's a bit yellow, but all the content and all the tools are available at www.databasepreservation.com, but also I think on the CEF site. Thank you for your attention. Any questions?
Thank you, Luis. It might very well be that everybody is just taken back by the fact that all your legacy maintenance systems have already been solved. But still, do you have any questions to Luis or Helder?
Sorry, a general question, sorry. How the eArchive model, I'm here, sorry. How the eArchive model, the concept model, the infrastructure model, the platform can converse with the new OIS standard that, as you know, introduce a new model about the distributed digital preservation.
Not quite sure if I'm going to answer your question, but we are kind of aware that further developments occurred related to OIS in a more practical way, but we still haven't assessed that information. That's the simple question, the simple answer. So we still need to see all the details, the requirements, and so on, in order to see if we are or not aligned. So we still need to do that work.
But just a small remark. There is a new project that we are going to be part of that are going to focus on distributed preservation. But I think that it takes some time for things to go from the model into the implementation side. I think what is currently mature is this model that we shown today, the RODA, even scalable way, but not completely distributed. To note that In terms of OIS, we also support, as has been said, the representation information, the representation network, which gives and allows some pointers to outside, some level of distributedness in that part, but not in a complete way in the low level of the system.
And adding from the general e-archiving building block point of view, we do work in multiple different directions, and it might really be confusing. So on the one side, we are working with specific specifications. So for the individual processes of transfer, preservation, and access, which are not really dependent for the preservation action at the end of the day, is implemented in a distributed manner or in a localized manner. So the specifications, according to our initial assessment, are still going to be valid in the concept of the updated OS as well. In terms of the software portfolio which we have currently, it's not necessarily going into the distributed world yet. But obviously, when you have any good questions or any proposals or use cases, specific use cases which you would like eArchiving building block to look into, then please contact us through the SMO or the service desk. So we do not see ourselves working in a closed environment, in a closed glass box, and just pushing information out there, but we are very much dependent on your needs as the community. So if there is a real need use case, please just come forward and contact us. If there are no further questions, then we'll have a bit more time during the coffee break, which means that individually you can all go to Elder and Louise and work out your service contracts. Thank you.